Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here again at the Festival Sant Jordi. Thank you very much, Marianne, and everyone who makes this wonderful event possible. I'm going to read tonight from the poetry of a Chilean poet, Ennio Moltedo, whose dates are 1931 to 2012. And the poems I'll read this evening come from a collection called La Noche, a collection of 113 prose poems written during and against the Pinochet dictatorship, but not published until the return of democracy. I'm delighted to say that night, my translation of this book will be published in a bilingual edition in November by World Poetry Books. Interestingly enough, after his first book, Moltedo never again wrote lineated texts. In fact, he delineated his early poems. He was searching for prose within prose for interior rhythm and texture, for tense concision. And although the writing is very concise, even terse, there's a range of registers, lyrics and miniature epics, high dramas and alternate realities, as well as precise renderings of the sea and coastline, old city streets and corners, and the blight of nouveau riche construction. Moltedo was obsessed with the fact that under the generals, the judiciary, unlike the parliament and other branches of the civilian government, continued to function. Legal terminology abounds in Moltedo's poems and usually leads us into territory that is chillingly surreal. I'm going to just dive into the poems. None of the poems have titles, they have numbers. Okay? So this is from La Noche, or Night, by Ennio Moltedo. 1. At what time must the birds lined up in gardens, trees, and cages sing? Look to the law. 7. Definitive sentences do not appear in these pages unless they were previously published in the newspaper of record, as the law decrees and horizons vanish. 10. If you put your ear to the naked earth, you will precisely hear the murderers' names. 12. They have sent me to the bottom of the sea, without oxygen, of course, in street clothes, with blue envelope in hand. 15, and this is the title poem. Noche, from the Latin nox, from the Greek nintos, descended in turn from the Sanskrit nocta. In German, one says nacht, in English, night, in Portuguese, noite, in French, nuit, in Catalan, nit, in Walloon, nut, in Chile, night is eternal. 21. Once you've been thrown out and good riddance, you can't go back home. Even when out of sight and out of mind, you set out again as an old man to go back to the place that gave you comfort, your fatherland, because your fatherland has disappeared. 23. No problem. Plowing end to end, slitting the country end to end, back and forth, one furrow next to another, like bleachers in the stadium, as seen from the air, their traces sinking ever deeper, night and day, until they appear, until we hear their screaming. We're here, my darling, here. 24. The general heart doesn't beat, though it exists. What we can call, in sentimental moments, the collective heart is not the sum total of individual hearts. The general heart is a unique artifact, and whoever finds it can consider himself dead. 49. Good for you, Galileo. You escaped by a hair. Now, in November of 1992, you are officially vindicated. As for our Juan, his case is just getting started. With no papers or proofs, there's no possible hurry, but let's hope it doesn't take 500 years. 57. Write me a law, write it by hand, a law that lays down a life sentence to read and listen to poetry, including the epic with its prefab prosody and caterpillar cadence, rhymed gunshots and bared breasts to excite the listener, and then what happens, happens. Write me a law with a gold-tipped pencil on a table in the burnt-out palace so I can legally, always legally, spend the rest of my life safe and snug and laughing at all the movies. A law so we can breathe, or at least an ordinance, something simple and local that will let us live in some cranny while the wind carries off or carries in the sound of guns. 62. Giving and taking. I hold out to you a certificate of good conduct, and you make your confession. You whisper in my ear where they are to be found. There will be no reports in the press and no discussion in front of the children. All quiet. What is not known does not exist. But you'll be comforted to know that in the future, the surprise can be repeated as many times as may be necessary. As many times as may be necessary. 66. One more skeleton and I'll be left talking to myself, buying bones, playing the flute, playing the drums with bones, pointing the way to fields, plantations, and nurseries until the day of the harvest and the great exportation of stems and bones. Just a few more. 82. Instead of so much eye-rolling and moralistic pouting today, a time of peace, why didn't you utter a single word in times of death, dickhead? 92. And what shall we do with all the love accumulated in distant countries? Return the ashes. 113. This is the last poem I'll read and the last poem of the collection. We wait for them on the blue shore. Let them come from every corner. Rag sellers, cure sellers, wandering tale tellers, ad runners, errand runners, the shamefaced, the abased, and etc. The sea washes them naked and carries away the slime. Thank you. Thank you all very much.